Hi, I'm Mike Montanari with Fast Monty's Garage. If you're new, this is my home garage where I built this beast behind me, 1969 GTO, with a Butler Performance 467 engine. Now, those of you that are returning probably saw my video about when I broke it, and I diagnosed it. A rocker had come off, and I thought I fixed it. Well, that's what this video is about. I didn't fix it. On a test drive, it started making noise, and I went ahead and pulled the valve covers and noticed something really odd. Check this out. I hope you can see this, but this is what I'm talking about. If you notice, all of these bolt heads are relatively the same height. This one is like 3/8 or maybe a ½ inch shorter than the others. And this is at top dead center, so there's clearly something wrong down where this lifter is. So that's why I suspect it's a collapsed lifter. We're gonna see. Odd, right? So that tells us that there's probably a collapsed lifter. At least I hope there's a collapsed lifter, because crossing everything I had two of, well, almost everything, we didn't hurt the camshaft. Because if we hurt the camshaft, that's a ton of work that I don't want to do. And it's expensive. Now, that being said, what we're going to do today is I'm going to take apart the top end of the engine. That means taking the carburetor off, the intake manifold, the valley pan, and that way we can actually see the lifters. This is obviously going to be on video. I'm going to be as thorough as possible. So if you've never done this before, it's just like open heart surgery. Once you've done the first one, it makes it easier to do the second, third, fourth, fifth, 100th one, right? So that being said, I'm going to set up a couple cameras over the engine. And again, I'm going to be thorough. If you have any questions, leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to help you out. And again, let's pray that we find it's just a broken lifter and that's all the damage. Okay? I'll be back in a second. Alrighty. Let's start with taking the valve cover. The intake off. And everyone should probably know how to do this, right? Just a wing nut. And there we go. And as I already mentioned, I took the plugs. The plug wires are out of the way. The plugs are out. And now we're just a top-down method approach. We're just going to take everything off. It's pretty self-explanatory. Those of you that are not used to AN fittings, I love these guys. These are very simple to attach and detach when necessary. So we just have the fuel line take apart here. We're going to start taking the wires off as well. But our first mission here is the carburetor. Of course, I forgot. There's probably fuel on the fuel lines. So that's what happens when you're over anxious about getting something apart. You forget little things like that. So we're good there. Here's the cotter pin for the throttle linkage. I just have to pull that off. I don't want to lose these little washers I have. So a little washer. And this pin just pulls out and throttle disconnected. And like everything else, I like to keep everything together. So I'm going to put the pin back in, the washer, and the cotter pin. This is actually So this is actually a little custom assembly I made. The cotter pin, I cut it off. It happened to work really well with the stock throttle connector. And this just slips out the back like this. Like that. Now I can put that aside. Now we can take this throttle bracket off. I have another cotter pin, but I'm gonna see if I can leave it on. So these are just 1/2-inch bolts. 4 bolts hold the carburetor on. Go. So I have the gasket, and this is actually a heat shield. So sometimes with a carburetor, if it gets too hot underneath the bowl, it forces the fuel to evaporate within the carburetor and cause what they call vapor lock. So this is actually a heat shield that Holley makes. And I can leave it on there, it's not a big deal. There's a gasket underneath it, and then obviously the gasket for the carburetor. This is something else I recommend, is to use studs. Now most people have to put bolts down through the intake manifold. These are actually studs. And you can see there's a little step on the top. It's beautiful because you can put your carburetor on, don't have to fidget with getting bolts lined up. And when you put the nut on, it sits right on top and just screws right on. Makes it super easy to take your carburetor on and off. I don't remember if I mentioned it, but I did drain the coolant. So the thermostat housing, obviously the thermostat's in there. We're going to take this off next and check our coolant level, because this portion of the intake manifold actually has water running through it, and that's what keeps the heads cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my Allen wrench for that. There's the thermostat. Oh, and it worked. There's no coolant, so that's good. Next step is to take our wire harness off. There isn't a lot of wires, just 4 wires. We have alternator, temperature sending unit, that's for the thermostat. This is actually the temperature sending unit for the air conditioner. The electric fans. So when this gets to a certain point of temperature, the electric fans come on, which I highly recommend. Those of you that are running belts, old-fashioned clutch fan in the front of the motor, you guys know your propensity to overheat goes way up when you're sitting in traffic. And I grew up on this car, and I remember those days. And so when I built this motor, I did not want to experience that again. And of course, this nut is giving me a hard time. All right, plan B. Plan B. That was easier. Sometimes I just get too tricky and it bites me in the ass. Okay. Always put the nuts back, you don't want to lose them. This is why I love these bullet connectors. Those of you guys seen the video I did about all the under dash work, that's what I installed. Makes it easy taking wires off. So the blade connector just pops off. And the alternator, a little boot. It's got another nut underneath. Like that. That looks like the same as the carburetor. Alright. I forgot to mention, disconnect your battery because this is a live wire right here. My battery is disconnected. Because when this comes flopping off of here and it touches anything grounded, you're in for a shock. Okay, wire harness is off. The wire harness is off, and I'm going to go ahead and move the fuel line out the way. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 bolts to take off. 11, don't forget about the front lock. Of course, I use fancy dancy fasteners, and the problem with that is you need an Allen wrench. And I have an Allen adapter on a socket that doesn't reach them all. So I'm just going to loosen them up a little bit. And I did use anti-seize on these threads because they go into aluminum. Sometimes stainless steel and aluminum don't get along and they bind. Don't ask me how I know that. That was not fun when I did that on a different engine. Okay, we have one last bolt, and that's the one holding the water pump, because it's pumping water into the intake manifold, and then it gets diverted to the heads. And it holds the seal together. It'll make more sense when we put this back together. And of course, I'm using these fancy dancy socket head cap screws, which require an Allen key. Oh, I wasn't thinking clearly on that, but it does look pretty, doesn't it? Okay, that's loose, so I'm just going to leave it there. In theory, it shouldn't go anywhere. And now we use our handy dandy attitude adjuster. And we're going to hopefully break it loose a little bit. There we go, loose on that side. And we're loose on this side. It's off now. PCV valve's gonna come with it. Take this off. Ba-bam! Bam! Now the intake's off. I'm just gonna go ahead and clean this up a little bit, because when we take this valley pan out, I really don't want a lot of dirt going into the motor and causing more havoc for us. And now I think about it, we should probably take the gaskets off. So I'm going to do that too. While we're at this stage, I'm going to cover up my intake manifold ports, because we don't need unnecessary dirt getting in there. So this is 1.5 inch tape. It fits perfectly over each port. We don't need to go fishing for dirt or screws or anything in any of these holes. Here comes the fun part. So this valley pan has liquid sealer around it, and even on these bolts. So we're going to take the bolts off first, and then I'm going to at it, because we have to pry this off. This is not a gasket. This is actually stuck on. It's like liquid gasket. I'll show you guys how to put that on when we reassemble it, but this is going to be a challenge. So I'm going to go ahead and take these nuts off and then pry it off. We got it cracked. So you're gonna see what I'm gonna see first time here. This is where the bad lifter should be, right here. So there we go. Oh, man. Stop yelling, stop bitching. Sorry about that. Right here's where we're gonna look. Oh, damn it. Oh, that's not what I wanted to see, everyone. Oh, shoot. Oh. So as you can tell, this broke off the lifter. The lifter is pushing on the camshaft. The roller is gone. Oh, it's right here. There's the roller. Son of a bitch. Oh. Alright, I'm going to take those lifters out. Damn it. Oh man, it's fucking jammed in there. Oh man, it's jammed in there. So that's what it's supposed to look like. Oh man. Oh, I can't even lift it through the bore because it's so deformed on the end. So a little change of view here. It's actually been a couple days since we took this apart. I needed a mental break. And so what I want to do today is I'm going to turn the engine over twice so we can get a full cycle in, and we can watch the cam turn, see if we see any, what this damage really is. I'm gonna leave this up, and then I'm gonna label each pair, and I'm gonna take them out. And when I take them out, I'll show you a cool little jig, or actually parts holder that we can put everything in, and we can keep track of everything. So I'm assuming the cam has to come out. So when we fully take it out and I send it back to Butler, they might send it back to Comp or Lunati for analysis. We can keep track of everything. So there we go. So if you guys remember, we're on top dead center on number 3. So we're just going to I'm going to keep going all the way until we're back to top dead center number 3. Here's the top of the lobe, and it is super rough. There is no way that we can reuse the cam, because it'll just destroy itself over time. So I told you guys about this really cool parts holder. So I have it already backwards, but it says front right here, so front of the engine. And this is number 3 that we took out with our poly locks and our rods. And I can go ahead and put our lifter right in there. Oh, I forgot. I can't take the other lifter out. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that for the whole engine. there we have it. So that's disappointing news. As you saw, when we tore apart the motor, at least took off the valley pan, and saw that that lifter was stuck in the bore because it sheared off. That means we have to pull the motor because the camshaft was damaged. Here's another picture of it. Wow, what a ton of work. But the good news is, if you haven't subscribed already, you do not want to miss the next series of videos because we obviously have to pull the motor. And that's an intensive job. You have to pull the transmission. It doesn't all come out at once, and it'll be several videos. So make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell. And in your notification settings, you can actually tell it to email you when new videos are released. That's the trick, so you don't have to guess at it. So you're going to see me again. The other good news is I did talk to Butler Performance. David Butler, very helpful, and Michael Williams as well. I must have spent over an hour on the phone walking through what I might have done wrong, etc., etc. And they're very reassuring. Basically, lifters of every make and model fail, have some sort of failure mode. And if you guys remember, this tab broke off on the lifter. So when we get that remaining lifter out of the bore, which means after the engine's out and we tear it apart, then I can send all the lifters back to Butler. They're going to send them to Linati for root cause analysis, which is great because everyone, it's a learning experience for everyone, including Butler, myself, you guys, and we'll have to move forward. So I've already started the process of sourcing new lifters and a new cam. So the next video series will be pulling the engine, transmission, etc., and how to do that in your home garage. Granted, I have a lift, but you know, there's some workarounds for doing it on jack stands. And so until then, as the saying goes, build them fast, but drive them faster.